What's up, people? I am back for another video. Sorry, I haven't done a video in a few days. Today, I am reviewing the new Hellboy movie that came out like a month ago. They just like silently just like dropped it like October 8th, and it's just out now. And I watched it last night, and it's not good. And this isn't going to be a rant necessarily because it's not like the movie pissed me off. It's just, I mean, when I saw the trailer, I remember this movie. I didn't even know it was coming out. I just woke up one day and I saw that there was a trailer for this. I'm like, oh, it was this Hellboy movie that no one even talked about. And I love the character Hellboy. I mean, we all know I know a little bit of the comics, and I will say a positive about this one is they do try to have it be more like the comic tone, like it's R rated. It's a bit more on the horror side because if you actually know the character, Hellboy is more horror. I know in the movies they lean a bit more into the Rob Perlman movies, lean a bit more action. Like, there's still horror elements more in the first one. I think the second one, the horror element's almost gone. It's like almost non-existent. But definitely in that first one, there's little horror elements in there, and I love those movies. Those were fucking fun. Ron Perlman is Hellboy. Hellboy's a gruff character, but he has like a couple snarky lines, and fundamentally, I think that's the problem with I have really with the guy who plays Hellboy in this. He was very boring in the lines. Like they were trying to make it seem like, oh, he has like those Ron Perlman one liners, and they didn't work, man. This looked like a fan film. Like, and here's the thing: if this was a 20-minute fan film, this would be fine. But this was an hour and a half film, and the pacing is just a lot of just walking around. There's just moments you're just walking in the woods. The opening was kind of cool, where Hellboy gets into a fight with this giant looking spider that they're transporting with his partner Bobby Joe, who, like, the problem I have with this movie is a lot of shit just kind of happens. There's no real plot, not really. I guess like the one of what I can gather, they need to stop the crooked man, who he's just there for is just to show creepy imagery. And the amount of times they will do this weird filter where it looks like, I think it's supposed to be Hellboy in this like dream world, but it clearly just looks like it's him on LSD. Like, you know how they like distort the vision like you're almost high? That's what it looks like, and it just did not look good. It At times shit just will happen just because like I didn't really feel like there was any rhyme or reason things would just happen. That's why I was saying, like, this review isn't going to be thorough in that sense because I can't really go into like the plot. I can't really explain to you the plot because it almost really doesn't have a plot. It's Hellboy just in the woods, and I know the Crooked Man story is he's an actual character from the comics, and I think a lot of it is in the woods in the comics, so that's fine. But man, you can't just show a million scenes of just them walking in the woods because that got annoying after a while. I didn't really. Another movie that did this was In a Violent Nature, but at least in that movie, it kind of made sense because you're following the perspective of the killer, so that's gonna make sense why you're just walking in the woods at times. In this movie, I really feel like you could have cut a lot of them. There's also just random transitions too. Like there'll be moments something happens transition. And this is more earlier in the movie, but there was a transition where it looked like it was almost going to commercial. Like, you know how they'll play movies on a commercial, and when they got to cut to commercial, like a movie on a channel where there's commercials, they got to get ready to cut to commercial, so the screen goes black, and that's when you get the transition, like the commercial. That's what there was. There was a couple of moments like that. I'm like, the fight scenes are okay, and there was one scene that was actually really good. There's a scene where it's the wife of the character you follow that's like the villager, and her body is like just limp and because there's nothing in it, but then it like almost reflates in her body, she comes back alive, and it's like her body like almost inflates again and gets full. That looked cool. I thought that was a cool like practical effect in the movie, but that was like one scene. And some of the fights were okay, but he doesn't use his gun until like in the end, and it's just man, I just feel like I wanted this film to be much better, but it kind of makes sense. No one talked about this movie. I didn't even know it was coming out. And the fact that it costs, like, let's be real, it's 20 million, but it looks like it cost $5. And Godzilla minus one was cheaper than this, and it looks better. How? This movie just, it's kind of disappointing. I won't call it dog shit, but it's not a good movie. I don't really recommend it. I'd almost say you can skip this one. It's tied for me with the 2019 one. And both, what pauses I have with both of those, they were trying to be more like the comic, where it is a bit more horror toned, and it is R-rated. Like Hellboy, if we're being real, is an R-rated world. I know the movies were PG-13, the Ron Perlman ones, but if we're being real, he is an R-rated character, and I do like that both these movies try that, but the villain sucks. The acting is pretty bad, especially from this lady in white who's like this ghost you see, who I guess works with the Crooked Man, and some of her line delivery is just bad, man. I can't really praise this movie. I don't have any positives, man. I think it's well made. Well made. I meant to say I like the horror tone, but that's it. That's all the positives I could really have. The guy that got to be Hellboy isn't good. It's not even really well made. It's not well acted. I think his I guess partner Bobby Joe, I think she's okay as a character, but and they do try to force some weird love thing with him and her too towards the end, even though there was no build up to it. So out of 10, I'd give this movie like a 4. Honestly, it's pretty bad. It's a pretty bad movie. Yeah, I'm probably gonna type this video, skip this one at all costs, because there's no reason to watch it. I don't think. Like, let this one just not be known. I get it. It was trying to be more in vein with the comics, and I know that because I even think the 2019 one tried the same thing, where it tried to be more R-rated and go more of that horror direction. But I just think it wasn't well executed in either. Like I said, the points in this movie where shit just kind of happens. It doesn't necessarily make sense why it's happening, but shit just happens. So yeah, it's not good. Not the worst thing I've seen all year, obviously, because the Crow reboot, Joker 2, Borderlands, those are up there for me. But this is pretty bad, and it's kind of disappointing because I do want a good Hellboy movie, because as much as I love DC and Marvel, I've always wanted, same with Spawn. That's why I want a good Spawn film, because Hellboy and Spawn are two, like, in terms of non DC Marvel, those are probably the two most popular characters that are not DC or Marvel. Spawn being Image Comics and Hellboy being Dark Horse. There are two characters that are not tied to either company. I would love a great Spawn film, because it's, as much as, like, y'all know, I love DC and Marvel, but it would be nice to have a different, one of those, like Image or Dark Horse, having one of their characters have a big deal movie, and it was, that's not DC or Marvel, but unfortunately, just, I don't know what's going on with Hellboy, why they just can't get it right. I don't know if I think, honestly, the last resort, you just try to get, as much as Ron Perlman is a fuck in real life, I think what you gotta do is you gotta get him back and just make it R-rated. Do a Hellboy 3 with him and just make it R-rated. I think these days, people are much more pro an R-rated superhero movie, and I think that was partly why, because back then it wasn't as rampant, besides maybe Blade. Now that it's, like, frequent now, I don't see why they wouldn't be against it, because I don't really think trying another Hellboy with a different person isn't working. And it sucks, because I think Hellboy, theoretically, on paper, I'm not against recasting. I'm not against recasting Hellboy at all. But it's just two times now they've tried recasting the character, and it hasn't worked. So this time, if you're gonna do another Hellboy movie, just do Hellboy 3. Just get Ron Perlman, get Alan Tudyk, get some of that same cast, and just do a Hellboy 3 and just make it R-rated. I think and then maybe you could still try to bring in more of that horror tone from the comics, but still have fucking, it just, yeah, Ron Perlman, man. trying it with a different actor at this point. I thought it could work. I'm not inherently against recasting Hellboy. It's just I think people at this point have made their mind up. They have spoke with their wallets and or just publicly. People just want another Hellboy with Ron Perlman. I don't think they want another one with another actor. So overall, but granted, these both this one and the 2019 Hellboy are not helping, and it sucks because I would love a great Hellboy movie because I want a character that's not DC to do well or Marvel to do well, and you know. Anyways, let's. I guess we can start getting into the review. The movie, yeah, it's not great. I don't. I would pretty much say avoid at all costs. There's no need to watch this, honestly. Like I don't even. There's moments where it tries to have atmosphere, but I just think it almost terribly executes it. Like it's clearly trying to have atmosphere, but it just doesn't hit. So, but anyways, later tonight or tomorrow, I will be reviewing Batman: Mask of Phantasm. I will watch it tonight. I'm gonna try to review it tonight because I have to work in the morning. I don't know. So if anything, I will definitely do it tomorrow, like maybe this time tomorrow. When I get back from work, I'll review Batman: Mask of Phantasm. I'll try to do it tonight, but I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna keep it real. I'm not. No promises. If anything, I'll do it tomorrow, definitely. And then also tomorrow, return of Bad Movie Wednesday. For the first time in a while, I'll be doing a movie. One of my friends recommended me that he kind of showed me this. Not necessarily recommended me, but found me a bad movie to review. It's with Tom Selleck and Gene Simmons. It's called Runaway. So I don't know anything about this movie. I just know it's a bad movie. Like I watched the scene and I was just like, yes, this is perfect. So I'll be doing that tomorrow. And then yeah, but let's get into Hellboy, the Crooked Man. So the movie just kind of starts like you're wrong. I don't mind a cold start in a movie if it makes sense, but when you just start abruptly, sometimes for me it's like fuck. Let me get a feel of, especially when you're introducing a new version of the character. This is a new Hellboy, guys. Let us, and also I feel like the other problem is we didn't get to know BRPD. If you remember, that's the organization Hellboy works for, and they mention them, but they're not really there. And I get it; it was a smaller budget, but fuck, man, you could have. I felt like there was no BRPD element to it. Like aside from his partner, and they're transporting the spider that breaks out, and we get a fight with them in this giant spider. Which I'll admit, some of the creatures, like there's a scene later, this girl gets attacked by this snake and Hellboy has to fight it. And it's like, okay, like some of the creature designs aren't terrible necessarily, but it's just like I said, there's moments they're just kind of meandering in the woods and they run into this couple in the woods, and I think it's supposed to be the 50s, even though I'm gonna be honest, the movie does not do a good job of telling you it's the 50s. I assume, because when I was watching this last night, I was thinking, oh, it's like modern day. No, I like as I looked on Wikipedia. Wikipedia mentions, oh, it's the 50s. Wait, it's supposed to be the 50s? Which on paper, I'm not against the idea of doing a Hellboy movie in the time period, but the movie does a terrible job of letting you know it's the 50s. Because even like the train, I'm gonna be real with you. There are trains that look like that now that I'm like, it doesn't look like the 50s. I wouldn't have. And the people they run into, like there's this guy, I don't remember his name. He clearly, it's almost like he's supposed to be, he kind of becomes these psychic Hellboys. And it just doesn't work, man. He's just kind of boring, and he has to save his wife. Well, no, his wife gets killed, and he has to save his daughter. I think that's what it is. His wife gets killed by the Crooked Man, and this town is beholden to him, and I guess he's like this legend who's this entity. And the actor who played the Crooked Man was okay, and I think he would have. You could have had a Joker kind of Batman thing with him and Hellboy. Like him and Hellboy, you have this kind of they're tied together. You even have him know like a lot of Hellboy's past. You should have went more into that instead of him just being generic supernatural dude who is basically a zombie. And there's a scene they go to a church. They have to flock to a church where the pastor is this blind black dude who I guess gets possessed by the blind man or the crooked man and like tries to attack one of the guys that gets knocked out. But Hellboy takes this because it's enchanted like shovel where they write like the cross on it, right? And he starts like beating up. He weakens the crooked man with it somehow. I don't know. There's a scene where he has to stop the snake from possessing the guy's daughter, which I don't know, man. I get it. This is why I think the movies worked. As much as I like the horror tone, I don't know if it's meant for a movie. I think if you're gonna go more the horror tone for Hellboy, I think you gotta lean into the action, and I think that's why the movies work. Those original two worked because they were action. Don't get me wrong, I love the horror element of Hellboy, but I think the problem is when you do that, this movie could have just been its own fucking horror movie. If you took Hellboy out and any mention of BRPD and all that, and you just made it about you changed the Crooked Man's name to like some creepy entity, and it's about this village being possessed and they have to try to stop it. I think that could have worked as its own movie. It doesn't work as Hellboy, and I think that's why you almost kind of need that action element. And yes, there are some action moments in this movie, but I just felt like it was just moments where it's just kind of boring and just random shit happening because they're clearly still. Because I do think I wonder if this was originally intended to be like some horror movie, but they couldn't get it made, so they're like, "Fuck it, let's just throw Hellboy in it." For some fucking reason, because I don't know, man. Because a lot of the scares just feel random. Because Hellboy doesn't really do Hellboy things like he squeezes the snake's head. Okay, he kills a spider. All right, but then that's it. But then there's moments where I don't know if it's supposed to be visions or if it's dreams where Hellboy is talking to the guy's daughter in this like it looks like he's like almost high like think like some crazy LSD vision where just like you can clearly tell they distorted the effect to make it look like you're tripping, and I don't know. It just when those scenes came, I just like, I think I know it's supposed to try to be creepy, but it just feels like I'm just high and it becomes a joke. And the movie's pacing is just off because there's just moments where him and Bobby Joe or him and the other guy are just walking around the woods. And I'm sorry, that gets boring at some points where it's just them walking in the fucking woods. And it's like, I would have rather this had just been a film where you fucking build up and have better transitions. And like I said, the pacing's just off, man. It's just, I'm like, this should have just been a 20-minute Hellboy fan film somebody made. This didn't need to be an hour and a half movie. I'm just going to say it. I don't think this needed to be an hour and a half film because I just felt like there's a lot of just wasted screen time. You could have easily trimmed this to like an hour, like to a 20 to 15, 20-minute fan film on YouTube. And I think this would be good. If it was a 15, 20-minute fan film, even with the guy's performance as Hellboy, I would have been like, okay, this is an okay Hellboy fan film. This isn't a movie. This didn't need to be a whole hour and a half movie because I just felt like there was a lot of just wasted screen time or random shit happening where you might, okay, like the Crooked Man and I guess his followers attack the church and it almost becomes like a zombie movie at that point. Like, that's what I mean. Like, this movie, if you took Hellboy out, you could easily just repurpose it to, like, some movie about a creepy supernatural entity turning maybe the villagers into zombies and the main characters have to, like, bunker themselves in a church. I think that movie, and maybe you have a giant spider in it for some reason. that movie could have worked without Hellboy. It didn't need. It's just I don't know. Hellboy was so out of place in his own film. That's what it felt like. And in this aspect, I do think this is worse than the 2019 one. As much as I had problems with that one, Hellboy was not really. I'll say this: Hellboy was not the problem in the 2019 one. It was more everything else, like the villain, the really bad CGI, and yeah, the shit story. But I thought Hellboy himself was fine, and he at least still felt like a vital part of the movie. I don't feel about that way about this Hellboy. He just feels there. He just feels like he's just fucking there, and it's not his fault. I think if maybe they should have went in more of an action route. As much as I like the horror tone of the comics, I think even in the comics they still have an action tone to them still, and I think there needs to always be that action element. I think this one maybe they went too horror. I'm just gonna say, as much as I'm a horror guy, I think maybe they went too horror with it. To where it wasn't a Hellboy movie. You know, he eventually defeats the Crooked Man. I'm just gonna jump ahead. He eventually defeats the Crooked Man and stops. I'm assuming his like sidekick, this lady on a horse who she is the worst. The actress who plays her, no disrespect, I don't know if it's the direction. I don't know if this is her first movie. I don't know. I don't know. But either way, she was fucking horrible. In terms of acting, she is the worst actress in the entire movie. Every time she would say lines, I'm just like, oh. I'm like, is this your first movie? Have you never been in a movie before? Like, I'm like, that's why I was saying, if this was a short fan film, maybe her acting would be tolerable for a film that's an hour and a half that apparently originally was gonna be theatrical, but then they just decided they smartened up and saw that no one was gonna pay for this shit. So they're like, all right, we're just gonna straight to streaming. But if we're being real, if this, they were originally gonna go for a theatrical release, so this lady's acting is just awful. Every scene she's in, she's overacting. She's clearly trying too hard to be creepy and come off creepy, but it comes off cringe instead of creepy. Um, like I said, some of the fights are okay, but the movie is just not that good. The Crooked Man, he's in a couple of scenes, isn't even really that effective. He just says babble to fucking Hellboy at times. I'm just like, what are you talking about? What does this have to do with anything? That's why I was like, I wanted to really like this movie, but I was willing to give it a chance, even with the $5 budget, right? you know, but it's not good. It's not mind you, it's not the worst thing in the world I've seen all year. And obviously, I think there's a couple things I put ahead of this in terms of that is worse that has come out this year. But for me, it's still pretty bad, and I can't really I cannot recommend this. Avoid this one at all costs. There's no need to watch it. Even if you like the character of Hellboy and you maybe like the other movies, I'd only say, I guess, if you want to watch it, just only if you're curious and you just want to see how this plays out. It's not a uber long movie, but I almost say it's just not worth it. Why waste an hour and a half? And just go back and watch the other Hellboy movies, the other two. It sucks that Hellboy, they just, for whatever reason, can't get him right now. I don't know why. They were able to get him back in the 2000s, the first one being in 2004 and the second one in '08. How the fuck did they get it right back then, but they can't get it right now? Twice. Hellboy in 2019 and 2024 should be really easy to do, but they can't fucking do it. I don't know. So, yeah, I don't recommend this movie. Fuck it. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not good either. It's badly made. The guy who plays Hellboy isn't that good. Hellboy in general doesn't even feel like he's a factor really in his own movie. I think they went too horror toned with it. I think you still need that action element, even in the comics. Yes, in the comics it is a bit more horror element, but it still has a lot of action. And I think they needed to go that direction instead of trying to go all horror, because when you do now, it just comes off like this movie feels like this should have just been its own horror movie and take out Hellboy and you rename the Crooked Man something else. This movie can be an okay like possession village movie, but tying it to Hellboy, yeah, this isn't good. So 4 out of 10. Never gonna watch again. I maybe fuck it. Since I just reviewed this piece of shit, why not? Maybe next week I'll go back and we'll do the first two Hellboy movies. I don't know if I'll do the 2019 one. I'll think about that, but but I am definitely game to do the two Ron Perlman ones, the Hellboy 2004 and then Hellboy Golden Army. So I'm down. So maybe next week we'll do Hellboy 1. So since I just reviewed this one, and it's sad because I really, same with Spawn, I would love a character that's, a, because to me, these two characters that are not, like, are probably the two biggest comic book characters that are not DC and Marvel. And I would love for them to do well. 'Cause as much as, like I said, I love DC and Marvel, it would be nice to see these other companies have one of their big heroes or characters on screen in the movies. Spawn, I think there's so much lore that I think he easily could work for a movie, but just, I don't know why they just don't take it seriously. And Hellboy, we got two good Hellboy movies, but just ever since, just been a shit show. Anyway, also the soundtrack in this movie is like non-existent. There's really no soundtrack either. I'm like, this should have just been a 20-minute fan film. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna get ready to call it here. The plan is I'm gonna watch Batman: Mask of Phantasm tonight. I'm gonna try to review it tonight, but if not, I'll review it tomorrow afternoon. Like tomorrow, maybe the same time as today. And then tomorrow for sure, though, I am gonna be doing Runaway. But anyways, guys, talk to y'all later. I'm like, you watching this movie, I'm like, I kind of get why they just released it straight to streaming. We can't charge people for this shit. Yeah. And yeah, it's just frustrating because I really do think Hellboy, like Spawn, does have a lot of lore that I think you could easily. And with Hellboy, it's frustrating because they've done two good ones before, so it's not like they can't do it. Spawn, at least, I had fun with the '97 movie, but let's be real, it's not a great representation of the character. I would love like an straight up accurate Spawn movie, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. But Hellboy, they have shown they can do that twice, but for whatever reason, like in 2019 and 2024, they can't seem to fucking do one. And it's not hard. I think what you need is you got to have that balance of horror and action because I think that's why. And I think I haven't seen the 2019 one in a while, so I don't remember if they leaned too horror, but this one did. I can definitely vouch for the 2024 one. They went far too horror to where I think that's why it didn't work. Hellboy, you do need to have that action element. He's an action character. I mean, he has one-liners like action characters do. He's gruff, but he does have like his one-liners, and that's why Ron Perlman worked. And when you go too horror, it almost like you can't do that because it's too horror. So, anyways, it is what it is. I mean, it's disappointing because I do like the character Hellboy, and I would like for him to be done well again. But I think at this point, you just have to just bring Ron Perlman back. I'm not against necessarily having somebody else play Hellboy, but just let him play Hellboy one more time. And then I think if you do his Hellboy movie, let him do his last hurrah with Hellboy 3, and then you can maybe move on to another actor. Because I think right now, if you try to do another Hellboy with a different actor, it's just going to flop. Even if it's good. I hate to say it. Even if it's actually good, I still think it would tank. Because I think people at this point just want Ron Perlman back. I think they felt like he didn't really get his last opportunity to play the character. So, yeah, at this point, if you're going to do another one, it has to be with Ron Perlman. You can't, it's not going to work with a different guy at this point. Anyway. But alright, guys. Pin Down Podcast. We should be streaming this week. I don't know yet, but we're definitely gonna. I think we're gonna review. We're not, instead of Dynamite, we might be reviewing NXT tomorrow, and I think we definitely should be doing SmackDown. So I'll figure out if we're gonna be streaming Saturday. But other than that, guys, I am gonna call it here. I'm gonna watch Batman: Mask of the Phantasm tonight, and I'm gonna hopefully review it tonight. But if not, tomorrow. Talk to y'all later. Peace.